Generally, magazine publishers aren't referred to as murderers. Most magazines, however, are now printed with the blood of HIV-positive individuals. Julian Wheel, co-founder of Vanguardist, the Austrian progressive men's magazine that published the issue, titled HIV Heroes, explained to Time on May 7, 2015, that the ink was a combination of 1 part donated blood to 28 parts ink. Just 3,000 copies of this special HIV-positive edition were printed. But Tech Times on May 2, 2015 noted, Vanguardist also released 10,000 issues of the magazine without the blood. Jason Romeco, executive creative director of the project, argues that by holding the special issue, readers are immediately breaking the taboo around HIV. Though the magazine was certified safe by doctors at both Harvard and Innsbruck universities, the issue was mired in controversy. One commenter of CBS News on April 30, 2015 claimed, "The owners and editors of this magazine should be confronted with jail." Such controversy prompts a research question. How does the inclusion of bodily materials in textual documents, such as a magazine, alter persuasive argumentation? To answer, we can turn to Jesus Cisneros' Remaking the Immigrant Body, Rhetoric, Materiality, and Social Protest in the Gran Marcha of March 25, 2006, presented at the National Communication Association Conference in 2008. Cisneros explains how the use of body supplements persuasive techniques, making it ideal for our analysis of Vanguardist blood-infused text. Therefore, to better understand a campaign some call bloody brilliant, we will examine Cisneros' model, applied to the HIV Heroes issue before finally deriving implications. Because, as noted on the packaging of the Vanguardist, now the issue is in our hands. In 2006, protest erupted nationwide when Congress considered legislation that would make illegal immigration a felony. Cisneros examined the largest of these protests, the Grand March's use of bodies as to supplement their rhetoric. Cisneros highlights 3 tactics for utilizing bodies to generate argument: concrete presence, singularity, and unruliness. Initially, bodies should create a concrete and undeniable presence. Cisneros explains that activists must convey a symbolic coming out into the public, showing the rhetorical power of their bodies. To avoid deportation, many immigrants attempt to blend in. However, during the Gran Marcha, an estimated 500,000 immigrants flooded the streets of downtown Los Angeles, making this once invisible population concrete and undeniable. Next, collective bodies must come together to create singularity. Cisneros argues that while the protest is comprised of individual activists, the bodies must come together to reform them into a singular entity. Chanting "Si se puede," or "Yes we can," and marching in mass groups transform diffuse immigrants into a singular entity, thus giving voice to the power of the collective body. Finally, activist bodies must be viewed as unruly. Cisneros explains that activists gain power when their bodies convey a material possibility of rowdiness. While nonviolent, the protesters make it clear they will not follow the dominant conventions of society. This makes them unruly in the eyes of the dominant white audience, forcing them to pay attention to this unruly force. To respect the emotional triggers around the magazine, and to meet shipping regulations for sending human tissue across international borders, Vanguardist packaged the magazine in a plastic seal. Next, we will apply Cisneros' model to the HIV Heroes issue. First, bodies should create a concrete and undeniable presence through a symbolic coming out. According to the Washington Post on May 4, 2015, 3 HIV-positive people donated their blood for this issue: a gay 26-year-old man, a 47-year-old mother, and a 32-year-old heterosexual man. Each elaborated on their identity in the magazine through in-depth interviews, published in both English and German. Furthermore, according to the aforementioned CBS News, The blood-infused ink may spark visceral reactions of revulsion and fear, thus forcing audiences to concretely experience these bodies in a vastly different manner than the often hidden nature of inflicted patients. Thus, vanguardist establishes a concrete and undeniable presence, fulfilling our first tenet. Next, collective bodies must come together to create singularity by infusing the ink with the mixed blood of the donors, a material stigmatized by the larger population. Vanguardist creates a singular entity, symbolic of the larger collective of HIV-positive patients. Specifically, by combining the blood of all three donors, it erases their personal characteristics. Any portion of ink could be any of the donors. Moreover, Disease magazine on May 4th, 2015 asserts, because the donors come from a range of walks of life, they are representative of the larger HIV-positive population, fulfilling our second tenet. Finally, activist bodies must be viewed as unruly. Typically, blood is supposed to be contained in the body, and HIV-positive blood is something society attempts to discipline and quarantine. However, in the case of Vanguardist magazine, the visible and tactile presence of the blood makes it unruly, not only because it violates these norms, but because incorrect health fears create stigma and make people uncomfortable. Packaging the magazine in an opaque plastic pouch imposes a veneer of taboo, especially because it is reminiscent of pornography packaging. Just as purchasing pornography is a rowdy act, breaking open the seal demands dialogue and challenges dominant stigmas faced by HIV-positive populations, fulfilling our final tenet. Since the Vanguardist issue was released, the hashtag HIV Heroes movement has grown to include videos and tweets, bringing a whole new meaning to a viral campaign. After examining Cisneros' model and applying it to the HIV Heroes issue, we can return to our research question. How does the inclusion of bodily materials in textual documents, such as a magazine, alter persuasive argumentation? The magazine forces audiences to confront dominant narratives about marginalized populations, increasing the efficacy of attempts to increase awareness of the struggles faced by the HIV-positive population. This can be further explored through two implications. Initially, the tactics used by the magazine highlight Singularity's potential problems of self-essentialism. C.C. Papakurisi, in her 2015 book, Effective Publics, argues that mass movements built around identity traits to foster singularity often force participants to surrender their individual identities, instead essentializing them to a single trait. However, in the case of Vanguardist, the presence of the individual profiles of the donors allowed for their personal stories to be contrasted against this mass identity. The activists are able to approach the demand for singularity without reducing themselves to a single dimension. This could also serve as a model for movement politics, as it allows for the promotion of collectivity without losing the diversity of participants to self-essentialism. Second, the use of blood, instead of bodies, allows contact while creating strategic distance. Vanguardist was able to achieve unruliness because the blood functions as synecdoche, or part representing the whole for those suffering from the disease. Typically, campaigns attempt to destigmatize HIV-positive people by showing their whole bodies. However, Vanguardists focused the protest on the most salient and stigmatized aspect of the disease: the blood. Essentially, the blood, the root of the stigma, is disassociated from the body, allowing audiences to see the donors for who they are and not their disease. Therefore, using partial representations is a potentially powerful tool, as it can create both distance and proximity to an issue. The magazine discusses why conversations about HIV are limited, including reasoning like the wrath of God and 5,000 years of patriarchy. Sounds like my life. After examining Cisneros' model, applying it to the HIV Heroes issue and deriving implications, if you would like to interact with the magazine, find me after the round. Now please, join me in a blood oath to break the stigma of HIV.